Now, this is a topic that I feel like I definitely have to tiptoe around because it can be taken in many ways and a lot of them not good. But in my opinion, this is just factual recounting. If you look at the evidence of history and you try and piece it all together, the same truth seems to appear. And that being that the quote unquote Israelites of today are not the Israelites of the past. They are usurpers of a lineage and a legacy, but they are not the original people. They are not the original Israelites. They took over the land the goodness Israelites had, but they did not live there for generations. Well, I mean, actually, that's not true. They did live there for generations, but they were not the Israelite people. As it is talked about in the book of Moses, they wander around in the desert, right? They wander around in the desert because they were nomadic tribal people and they couldn't go into the promised land until it was given to them through destruction. The promised land was destroyed, and Moses could never enter um, because he was an enemy, basically, of the Israelite people. So he wasn't allowed to enter. But the entering of um, the promised land doesn't really happen until um, it's destroyed, basically. And if you look at like the story of Abraham, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah kind of outlines this. And um, that's kind of, we have like these stories where the Israelites, they walk around the outside of Jericho or whatever, right? They walk around the walls blowing their trumpets and singing and yelling or whatever, and then after so many days of doing that, the walls come tumbling down and they are able to take over the city. And to me, I don't think that that's an exaggeration. I think that's literally what happened. However, it's not that they were not the cause of the walls coming crumbling down. That was God, right? So God in this case is just a military general or someone of significant power and prestige that basically was taunting the people of the city of Jericho with these backwater tribal people, and he probably thought it was funny. He was like, "Hey, you guys, go around the city and play your trumpets and make fun of them." Because we're gonna blow them to smithereens, and then you can have the city. I will give it to you afterwards. And it was like a taunt. It was just you know, like it's written down as this miracle, but it can be explained with just military might. And we also have the Sumerians, which um, consider themselves the real original Israelites, and that's a whole nother thing. But why is there this separation? Like, why do they think that they're the real Israelites and the other Israelites aren't? Like, that's kind of a weird thing. And I feel like it's really taboo to talk about this because it's questioning, their religion. It's not saying that the people of today are bad. I'm just saying that their history is not what they think it is necessarily, right? And it's not what they say it is. And I mean, this happens all the time in all kinds of religions and societies. Like, you look at the Americas have a very dark past when it comes to the United States colonizing and basically just trampling their way across the United States, right, in this quote unquote divine mission, basically, of conquests. The United States was promised to us. It was given to us by God, and so that I can't think of the term of what it was called to achieve that. It's totally blanking from my mind. But we have this in just our modern age, and how many people truly understand and know America's history 200 years or so after it happened, right? So it's so easy for this stuff to get lost if you just don't tell people about it. And over time, the only thing that gets written down is we've always been here. This has always been our land. And if you think about it, if you think about the current United States motto, it's pretty much this land is our land, and everyone else better get out. Like, you don't belong here, right? It's our land. We've always owned this land, and it was given to us by God. And it's a repetition of the past, right? This was not our land. We came here and we took it. And you know, saying that it was God ordained or not doesn't change the fact of what you did. And I feel like this is something that happened long in the past. And these Israelites, there's a story of an Egyptian pharaoh or someone going over and basically saying Israel was laid waste. I don't think that that's a lie. I think that he went over, he destroyed Israel, and then these people came in and then inhabited that land and then became known as the Israelites, even though the actual Israelites were gone, right? And that's why when you look into history, they cannot find any historical artifacts or remnants of the ancient Hebrews past a certain point, because they're looking for something that doesn't exist, right? They're finding ancient remains of civilizations that don't belong to them, because the Israelites before the Israelites did not have the same beliefs, did not have the same practices, and so you don't find a lot of what they had. And you think you would find certain things, and they just don't exist. And these cultures kind of grew, and certain things evolved from that point. But I think that around the time of what we consider, ancient Hebrew really started taking off is when there was a big collapse in the world, and this led to kind of a changing of the order of the world. And as you can see, um, we went into the Dark Ages, right? We it goes from the Bronze Age into the Dark Age, right? There was a total collapse. Civilization and society completely collapsed, and I feel like that is a significant thing to consider when you're thinking about, well, what caused that, and you know what are the odds that these Israelites made it out of it unscathed? And the answer is they didn't. And there's no remnants of the Israelites of the past, because they were erased so that their legacy could be overtaken by a new tribe of people, which just were never promised the land that they claim to have been promised. But, you know, that's besides the point. Um, so I just wanted to talk about it. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and I've been nervous to speak on it because it feels like a thing you really shouldn't talk about. But, just because history is ugly doesn't mean it's not true, right? Like, you can't avoid the truth just because you don't like it. Sometimes the truth needs to come out so we can understand ourselves better and understand the world better and understand where we are and where we're going, and truly understand the past. Because what I've been starting to realize is that we do not understand where we come from at all. We do not understand our past at all. We have no idea what we are and where we're going and what we're doing. we think that we have a good idea of the past, but I stand to argue that we are extremely misled on exactly what ancient history is and what exactly humans were, because we think that we were these primitive creatures, and I have a feeling that we're going to eventually find out that humans were not as primitive as we thought, and the possibility of societal collapse into a dark age is not something out of the question, and it's happened before and it can happen again, and it's important to keep that in mind when we go through life, because hubris is a very dangerous thing to have, and the best cure for hubris is realization and being exposed to the truths and what is reality. And I think we're living in this imaginary world, this fictitious creation of what exactly we are and who we are and where we come from, and reality is coming crashing in to destroy our conceptions of what exactly is true. And it's going to be really bizarre to find these things out, but they will be they will become known. And when they do, people are going to be lost. They're not going to know what to do with themselves, because you know nothing they know is true. How and that's a very scary thing, to realize that you know nothing, that you understand little, and we're just as lost as we've ever been. And I think it all starts with, you know, looking at the facts and realizing things are not adding up. So that's what I got to say about that. Peace out.
Yeah. So again, I just want to preface, because there's a lot of hate in the world right now. So it's unfortunate timing, and I just want to say that I've got no hate. I'm not saying that this has any implications for anyone currently, but I just think it's an interesting thing to look at about the past, because um, I feel like this is relevant, because the like the basis of um, a lot of Western religions is around this culture, right? And I feel like this culture co-opted an idea and transformed it to fit a more ideal dynamic, right? A more ideal scenario for them, right? And so it got transitioned, right? They kept what they liked and they got rid of anything that they didn't. And it's important to know this, because as I'm trying to dig deeper back into this, trying to find out what the base religion was, right? Because I do think that there is some sort of proto-religion that a lot of cultures come from, that is older than just, you know, uh, you know, what it, what's the proper term for all those religions? I don't know. I don't know. All the religions that come out of kind of the like Israel, like the Anatolia, like Middle East kind of region. Anything that comes out of that area is under one kind of umbrella of belief that kind of like split up into different factions, right? And so there's some of the main religions of today, because their practices are so intolerant and aggressive, right? If you don't like my way, you die. And that's been kind of how it's been practiced in most of history, right? It's not just one religion that's done this. This has been just about every religion um, for hundreds of years, right? And so uh, I think that it's important to realize this, right? It's not necessarily targeting anyone, but it is important to kind of bring this up because if they are not the quote unquote people for the promised land, then what is this promised land story talking about and when did it come about, right? And so I don't think that I think the promised land story got co-opted. I don't think that that's the original story. I think that they made adjustments to it, right? I think the Moses story has been co-opted. I don't think the Moses story, there's no proof that Moses actually existed, right? I think that Moses is a fictitious character built off of an even older storyline, right? And we see some similarities in like the Gilgamesh epic, right? And the fact that there are some similarities to the Gilgamesh epic in biblical stuff, to me, is more evidence towards the fact that they co-opted something far older, right? And what that is has been forgotten because it was erased they got rid of the old in order to keep the new, right? And I'm more interested in the old because I feel like the old was potentially a little bit more tolerant. I don't know, right? It's still to be discovered, right? I'm still working through it, but I feel the ideal, you know, if you think back to the Bronze Age, before the Bronze Age collapse, it was a relatively peaceful civilization and society, right? There was not a ton of warfare going on, and there was tons of trade. And I feel like in order to facilitate a system like that, it requires a certain level of tolerance, potentially. I don't know, right? I could be wrong. But it's hard to track that down because whatever came afterwards was not very tolerant, right? So, yeah. Anyway, peace out.